Need tools? We've got you covered. Go to ChromebookParts.com or click on the link below to pick up this sleek, portable toolkit. Flip the device over and unscrew 5 captive screws in the bottom cover. Gently insert the opener pick between the bottom cover and the palm rest. Slide along the edges to pop the bottom cover free. Unplug the battery from the motherboard. Remove 4 4mm screws from the battery. Gently lift up to unplug the antenna cables from the Wi-Fi card and unwind them from their grooves. Remove 1 2mm screw from the Wi-Fi card. Pull back to unplug the Wi-Fi card from the motherboard. Remove 6 captive screws from the fan and the heatsink. Unplug the fan from the motherboard and remove the heatsink and fan. Remove 5 4mm screws from the motherboard bracket. Remove the bracket. Pull up to unplug the LCD cable from the motherboard. Unplug the speakers from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the palm rest cable from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the smart card cable from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the touchpad cable from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the backlight cable from the motherboard. Flip open the locking clip and unplug the fingerprint ID cable from the motherboard. Unplug the CMOS cable from the motherboard. Unplug the DC jack from the motherboard. And finally, lift up to unplug the camera cable from the motherboard. Remove 2 1.5mm screws and 4 4mm screws from the motherboard and bracket. Remove the bracket. And gently lift up and pull back on the motherboard, taking care not to bend or damage the ports. Replace the motherboard back into its port slots, and be sure to get all the cables out from underneath. Replace the silver bracket, and replace the two 1.5mm screws and four 4mm screws. Plug the DC jack back into the motherboard. Plug the camera cable back into the motherboard. Plug the LCD cable back into the motherboard. Plug the speakers back into the motherboard. Plug the palm rest cable back into the motherboard. Plug the smart card cable back into the motherboard. Plug the touchpad cable back into the motherboard. Plug the backlight back into the motherboard. Plug the fingerprint ID back into the motherboard. Plug the CMOS back into the motherboard. Replace the fan, and tighten the two captive screws. Plug the fan back into the motherboard. Reseat the antenna cables back into their grooves. And plug the Wi-Fi card back into the motherboard. Replace the one 2mm screw back into the Wi-Fi card. Gently push down to plug the antenna cables back into the Wi-Fi card. Replace the other bracket, and replace the 5 4mm screws. Using a 99% isopropyl alcohol solution, clean off any remaining thermal paste on the new motherboard and heatsink. Apply thermal paste to the new motherboard as shown. and set the heatsink back into place. Tighten the 4 captive screws in the heatsink. Replace the battery, and be sure to slide it underneath the tabs. Replace the 4 4mm screws. Plug the battery back into the motherboard. Replace the bottom cover, and push down to snap it back into place. Tighten the 5 captive screws in the bottom cover.